Hey guys, by the time you watch this video, we are probably going to be in the new league with the druids. I simply played Path of Exile 2 for about 2 weeks when the third league started. I just played at the start of the league and then I completely quit the game because I just, did my fun with the character and I just had to do other things because this game is very addictive, so I don't want to ruin my life. I'm a League of Legends Challenger player. I got to do some other stuff with that game. Anyways, let's just get to the guide a bit so you guys get an idea of my character. It's a Blood Mage, playing with Mace and with a bunch of uniques. It's a very cooked build. I don't know how many of these things got used and discovered, pretty much. By the time I was making the build, none of these things were being played or just really used by anyone. Even some of these skills I haven't seen in a build at all, but, I only played for maybe like 3 weeks at the start or something, so probably there are some other interesting builds running around. I have no fucking idea. Either way, it's focused around Earth Shatter. This is the damaging spell, the main spell. Earth Shatter is simply great to explode with Warcries. It's just a very consistent abilities and it has a lot of hidden utility that you will notice in this build. And one of the main features of the Earth Shatter, like how do we explode it if I don't use endurance charges or if I'm not a Warbringer, I think it's called, the other Ascendancy. Well, there's another way which is very interesting to kind of abuse Warcry effects. So, what you can do on the passive skill tree is put it on the secondary weapon set, where you are going to have all of these secondary effects. By the way, keep in mind that I forgot a bunch of things, so I'm kind of trying to remember as I'm making this video. I'm doing this simply to save this as a piece of content for myself. If some guys end up getting value out of this, or if we might be able to utilize this build with a new patch. I haven't looked at the new patches, so we'll see how the Season 4 goes, and if I even play that. But overall, this build is amazing fun, and I want to have it saved as a memory through this video on my Path of Exile channel. Either way, you have the Warcries here. All of these are on secondary weapon set. My secondary weapon set points are all the stuff with green is for Warcries. And although you might not be able to get some damaging effects to transition, I still believe that stuff such as empowered attacks deal increased damage does not transfer over to the primary weapon set, but all of the other effects such as AoE, cooldown reduction, effects such as these that heal you, recovery rate, or even empowering additional attacks, Warcries empowered additional attack, all of these things, Warcries have a minimum of 10 power, all of these things do work, and you get much lower cooldown and much bigger AoE by investing into these points in secondary weapon set. So my Warcries go from, I think the base is about 8 seconds, they go to 3 seconds, which means that I can comfortably do Earth Shatter and then constantly explode them as I'm playing the game, right? It's a very fluid pattern with the Earth Shatter ability to spam these Warcries, and because the Warcries also have the support gem on them, we're gonna look at that soon. I'm gonna cover everything in this guide, as far as I remember. You can also stack your rage very easily, prepare it for bosses, just have a pretty simple rage mechanic. You can even invest into more rage because you have this easy tool. Now, we also have to talk about this unique mace. I'll have to go into a zone to show you. So what this unique mace does is that all damage from hits with this weapon contributes to freeze buildup. Now, I'm not sure if it's a bug. You also get Culling Strike against frozen enemies. But if I use Earth Shatter on the primary weapon set, then Explode on the secondary weapon swap, as I'm swapping the weapon, the damage from Earth Shatter, the explosion, is going to cause freeze buildup. I can show you against some monsters, you will see they are going to get shattered. Let's just enter a random map here. I don't have the best specs here, so my game is gonna be a little laggy, but I can just show you on a few mobs. As you can see, they are getting shattered. Because it simply works like that. I have tried other effects that work similarly and they don't seem to do. Maybe this mace is bugged. It has been working like this in the first version of Battle of Exile 2 as well, when they freshly made the game available. Patch 0.1, I suppose. And yeah, you are going to be able to cause freeze buildup using Earth Shatter. Now let me show you the ascendancy as well, so you guys can understand why I went for a Blood Mage in this build overall, because there are a lot of pieces of the puzzle that have to fit together so you guys get an overall idea of why this build functions, because I was able to finish pretty much the entire game with all the bosses, consistently farm with ease different things like, you know, I forgot how it's called actually. You know, the Simulacrum, yes, the Simulacrum map, you know, with the bosses and stuff with the 15 levels, and then of course the bridge boss and stuff like that. They're pretty comfortable. I was able to farm Simulacrum with relatively low gear to sort of farm a lot of currency that could be potentially valuable. Now let's look at what this does. So skills gain a base life cost equal to base mana cost, but you also get a lot of sustain. And this makes it viable to go for a life build and focus more around armor, elemental armor and stuff like that without relying on energy shield. There are advantages to life, advantages to energy shield. Obviously, life is thought as being pretty weak, but this is pretty much one of the best, if not the best life class in the game to go Blood Mage, because it has some pretty powerful effects with life. Because here, with life remnants, you can overheal a lot of your maximum life. You can overflow, so you can get, right now I have 3.4k HP, I easily get over 5k health. Anyways, then we have Blood Bars. Bleeding you inflict on cursed target is aggravated. Elemental damage also contributes to bleeding magnitude. Okay? So what this means is that if I can get extra value from curses, and I can contribute the bleeding magnitude with elemental damage. And you will see that this build focuses on elemental damage. It's almost entirely elemental damage with a little bit of physical damage, maybe like a small percentage. Then we also have enemies you curse have at least 50% of life reserved, sorry. So this is just a lot of free damage, pretty much, that you are going to deal to enemies. It's easy to understand what this does. It kind of makes them 50% squishier, which is pretty solid for the Whispers of. Then, very important, 25% of life loss from hits is prevented. Then that much life is lost over 4 seconds instead. So this kind of makes you 25% tankier, because you cannot get one shot by a lot of effects, especially with a big life pool. If you combine it with some armor, some elemental resistances, then it's very hard to die. You can be very tanky. Another effect here is that you can use life flasks. This is also pretty useful when you're kind of earlier in the game, leveling and getting some gear. Either way, it's giving me pretty big amount of physical damage increase. It also makes me kind of have infinite life flasks in a lot of situations. This could technically be replaced with Crimson Power if you have an idea of getting energy shield on your body armor. This is not mandatory in the build, unlike, for example, this and these are very powerful effects for this build. Even Whispers of the Flesh could technically be replaced. Other stuff here is mostly for spells and crits, so we don't care about that. Either way, Blood Mage, very strong ascendancy because I can get a lot of damage increase from all of these nodes. Yeah, it's just 3 very powerful increases in my damage, and I can also get a lot of survivability. Now, let's also look at my unique scepters that I'm using in the build for the secondary weapon set. So, like I said, guys, be patient because there's simply a shit ton to explain here. Now, let's look at these unique scepters that I'm running. So, for the primary weapon set where I have my weapon where I deal my damage with my abilities. Okay, the secondary weapon set is simply for Warcries and for something else you'll see in a moment. We got Sacred Flame Shrine Scepter, combined with a one-hand mace. So, what this does is that we gain a lot of fire resistance from the aura. I believe from my previous calculations was about, I don't know, something like 100, because I got amplification with my aura. I think I'm getting around 100% fire resistance from this effect. I don't remember exactly. Might be even higher. So we don't have to care about fire resistance from other pieces. We need very little fire resistance to cap. And then you get a lot of damage as extra fire damage. So this does add up with any kind of damage you deal with attack percentages with your main weapon, in this case the mace that I'm running. And you also get these enemies in your presence resist elemental damage based on their lowest resistance, which isn't super useful with the current version of the game, but it's still something that can come in handy because you'll see that there's a lot of elemental damage in the build and even different types of elemental damage. But this giving you fire damage is important because you'll be able to ignite more often, which you'll see in a second, makes a lot of sense with the build. Then for my secondary weapon set, on top of having this mace, which I told you creates freeze build-up, I can also run the Palm of the Heart Shrine Scepter, which gives me some stats, some like radius, the same aura, so when I swap between weapon sets, I keep the Purity of Fire. Now, if you're playing early game, this is way harder to obtain, much more expensive usually, so you could technically run this on both weapon sets if you have just one Palm of the Heart Shrine Scepter. Um, just like as an early tip in the build that I kind of did before I got my hands on Sacred Flame Shrine Scepter, because it was quite expensive, especially early in the league. But what this does, since I don't care about this damage increase when I'm in my secondary weapon set, because I'm only using it to cast War Cries, is that it also has this aura which drops meteors, which can, in a lot of cases, simply one-shot monsters, and it really aids your DPS and helps with clearing. So it's just an extra little bonus to have this other unique, which has the same Purity of Fire aura. We can get Presence area of effect on both of these things, and you'll see that Presence area of effect is going to have synergy with War Cries, with curses that are running through Blasphemy, and a lot of other good things. But let's just take it slowly. Now that I explained these scepters a bit, let's just go over the skill gems so you guys can understand what skills I'm running. So we can first of all go over the life remnants. I suppose it's pretty simple to understand. We are just trying to boost these things. This is some stuff we use with the leftover spirit. Not a big deal, max life and mana regen, you'll see in a second. For the Purity of Fire, we can give it +1 to levels. And then Earth Shatter, which, like I said, is the main DPS in a lot of situations. We get elemental damage. Attack speed, which kind of can be whatever. I just like the fast cast speed to be able to maneuver, dodge attacks, and stuff like that. It's not very efficient for your mana, but yeah, like I said, you can run other things if you have better options, better ideas, depending on your build. Branching Fissures 2 makes it branch twice, so it creates like these 3 lines, which is very beneficial. Then we got Flammability Magnitude, so you can apply Ignite easier, and Ignites deal more damage, and since there's a lot of fire damage in the build, you'll see later as well, plus 100% chance to inflict bleeding. That's how we use the bleeding to increase our DPS, and this can be very useful when clearing, especially when you are weaker, to use that Blood Mage Ascendancy combined with Earth Shatter. Now, there's also Lip Slam, which I use it to clear in combination with Ancestral Cry. You'll see in a moment big pack of mobs in like breaches or in the Abyss. Lip Slam can be quite handy. So keep in mind some of these pieces for later because it's simply a lot to explain. So we got elemental damage. You'll see in a second. It's simply a ton of elemental damage. Fissures on landing. Area of effect. I don't care about the accuracy. Because let's just look at my main weapon for a second. So what's the purpose of this weapon? It focused on elemental damage. We got 2 slots with gain 5% of damage as extra damage of all elements. We got fire damage, lightning damage, and then we are trying to roll lightning damage, fire damage, increased elemental damage with attacks, and then I managed to craft +4 level 2 attack skills, chance to gain all slot, and also 16% chance, which is a max roll for mace slam skills. Use yourself to cause aftershocks, and this is mainly using mace slam skills in the build, a couple of them actually. These are pretty high rolls. This weapon is not that hard to craft. By the way, this is a skin. It's actually the Akoyan Club, which has the passive to always hit. So that's why we can run this accuracy rating, which actually doesn't matter because we always hit, so we can get a little bit better AoE than magnified area, I think it's called. I'm trying to remember all these things as I haven't touched the game in quite a while now. Yeah, same thing here in order to stack ignites, because the Ancestral Cry, it builds glory with ignites. So we can use it with Lip Slam, just to be able to have Lip Slam build it itself. And we can also gain endurance charges, which are going to extend the duration of the Ancestral Cry. Look at the Ancestral Cry real quick before we go over the other things. So this builds glory, and because I have a lot of fire damage from the weapon and from the Sacred Flame, we can combine it with increased flammability support gems and get very high chance to ignite enemies. They ignite pretty much 24/7, so it's easy to build these glory stacks. And Ancestral Cry can be very powerful. It's just super strong steroid because it consistently boosts all of your attacks, the slam skills. You can also leave some extra damage here and there. Overall, you get a lot of damage, you get a lot of AoE. Ancestral Cry is simply great. But there are a couple things to note about this. It has to be on both of your weapon sets, so you have to have a mace on both weapon sets. That's why it's important on my secondary weapon set that I also have another mace. Otherwise, when you switch to Warcry, this build is not going to work because the Ancestral Cry bonus is going to be lost. It can only be maintained between weapon sets if it's selected on both weapon sets and you have a mace on each set. Of course, Infernal Cry is set to second, while the other attack skills are on the primary weapon set, which uses the weapon damage. Now let's go back here. We got the Infernal Cry, which has area of effect. And here we got Rage, reduced cooldown, less cost, which is kind of whatever. You just don't really have better options. And there's a 25% chance to not remove charges, but still count as consuming them. Which, this is pretty nice, simply because you might be able to save some endurance charges when you cast the Infernal Cry, because the Infernal Cry is important to build Ignite. So when you're doing this loop of trying to build Ignite with Lip Slam, this does help to keep some extra endurance charges in order to have more when you press the Ancestral Cry. Now, this is the same thing here, except that I'm running some build up on endurance charges when you have stun enemies, because Seismic Cry is simple to use. So why we're using Infernal Cry and Seismic Cry both in the same build, it's just easier to apply Earth Shatter, of course, but Seismic Cry can also give you a lot of endurance charges, and it's very easy to stun enemies on this build, and you'll understand more why. So, stunning enemies that are primed for stun, pretty valuable. You get a lot of damage, increased potential. Yeah, Seismic Cry is just amazing for this type of build. Now, something that's very interesting you'll see here is Cast on Elemental Ailment. How the fuck does this even function in the build? It's simply because these scepters, they have 100 spirit on them. So we can use this 100 spirit to reserve cast on elemental ailment on the secondary weapon set. Now when you transition to Earth Shatter, for some reason you can build energy, which means that I can use my primary weapon set when I'm switching to secondary weapon set, where the cast on elemental ailment is, to build charges, to build energy through my primary weapon set, because Earth Shatter is delayed. Now, any kind of delayed effect, such as, for example, Hammer of the Gods, is going to work with these mechanics. It can be Earth Shatter, but it can be any other skill, like, for example, I think it's called Earthquake. You know, the Earthquake ability, which has a delay, that can also work with the same mechanic. So you will see if I go hit some mobs, you'll be able to build this Frostbomb, which penetrates a lot of resistances. It's just a lot of exposure. You can add area of effect, you can add increased energy, you can also boost its exposure. You can also use this unique Ischel's Torment, whatever, and it can make this like huge frost bombs that cover the entire screen with additional boost from some other AoE sources. I can give you an example. It's extremely easy to build this energy basically instantly. Even on a boss, it's essentially instant to have this thing. So you'll see frost bombs are going to explode everywhere and cover the entire screen with this build, which is obviously very potent, very useful, because through the power of the scepter and the secondary weapon set, we can get this to function very nicely in our build to get a lot of elemental penetration, because we are dealing damage of essentially, you will see, every type. We got lightning, a lot of lightning and fire damage by default on a lot of our skills. Now, Forge Shaman is very interesting, very niche ability. We use it mostly to maybe nuke an elite. We use it on bosses, we use it to DPS in certain situations. For example, in the Simulacrum, it's really good for DPS. Now, Forge Shaman, it's a potent spell, and I mostly use it to deal as much damage as possible as a kind of semi-nuke. We can, of course, explode it to deal a lot of damage on the ground when you hit these earthquakes. But let's see what we got on it. So essentially boost makes sense, can make it more powerful since it's more situational use. We got elemental damage. This can be replaced, of course, it's not that mandatory. You can use some rage, make it deal more damage. More damage to snapshot in close range, just deal a lot. And Embitter. Embitter is very important because this way we can build some cold damage going. And keep in mind, we can penetrate all resistances in a lot of different ways, so it can work very well with Trinity. So, as I said, I'm using 100 Spirit on the secondary weapon set for cast elemental element, but I use Trinity with the 100 Spirit on the primary weapon set to boost my damage, because I can deal damage from different elemental types and build a lot of resonance. Okay, so on the Trinity, we are going to have a bunch of omens, just boosting some levels. The sweet spot of Trinity, I forgot the exact number. I believe it's about 23, 21. It's kind of a high number when you are able to get 7% more elemental damage per 30 resonance. So, right now it's level 24. It might be at 23. I actually forgot. Either way, if you hit that threshold, 7% more elemental damage, going from 6% to 7% is pretty huge, because you get a lot of damage increased that way. So, next thing up, we got Ancestral Cry, which has skill effect duration. Supported skills have 20% chance to be doubled. It also has lightning attunement, so you can proc more lightning resonance in some instances, because that's kind of hard to get in the build. Although there are some ways, area of effect and elemental damage. It doesn't really matter what you run here, as long as you get some skill effect duration. Charges to be doubled can also be nice. The rest are sort of whatever. You are not really using the steps or the power with the strikes on this build, so that's fine. Very important aspect of the build is blasphemy, because this does apply very powerful curses that I will show you in a second, because next up I'm gonna go over the passive skill tree. So we are running Temporal Chains and Enfeeble to get a lot of debuffing, very high durability. Alternatively, in some fights it's viable to run Elemental Weakness. Of course, all of these are leveled up as much as we can, as much as the thresholds actually mean something. Increased magnitude, and we get Diala's Desire if we want to max it as much as possible, which is going to allow us to get some extra spirit value, and of course some area of effect. Now, to run Blasphemy is extremely costly on your spirit. As you can see in my build right now, I have 300 spirit. Now, I don't have to blow all of it, but we still have to use a fair amount, because some of my spirit is simply going into this mana regeneration and cannibalism. Not sure if I have anything else. Either way, the last skill is Overwhelming Presence. And you'll see, because I'm our aura maxing with Blasphemy, Overwhelming Presence can essentially get doubled effect. We can give it some +2 levels, and it can make it twice as fast to stun and apply elemental ailments to enemies. So this will tie into applying ignites. And keep in mind, we can also cause freeze buildup, and because we have Embitter, we can also cause chill buildup, and there are some other sources of cold damage, so we can freeze, ignite, shock pretty well, and we can also chill enemies. We can apply all of these elemental ailments, and you'll see in a moment that there are a lot of synergies that go into that in the passive skill tree, and even in jewels. Okay. So now, let's go over the passive skill tree a bit. We work our way up, and we grab Whispers of Doom, so we can apply an additional curse. Then, we can choose some more curse power by going here, and we can also increase damage for each type of elemental ailment on enemy. Can be up to 80% in boss fights. It's very potent. We got some extra little benefits here, elemental damage and such, chance to do whatever. Then 24% increased damage which is against enemies affected by elemental ailments, 10% increased chance to inflict ailments against rare or unique enemies. We can get some increased damage against enemies affected by elemental ailments, which can apply a lot of these powerful values. Then we go down a bit and we can get all of these bonuses where we can increase the power of the curses, but also of any kind of aura, such as Overwhelming Presence. You can get Aura Magnitude, and here you can increase your AoE, which can work for literally everything. Warcry, attacks, Earth Shatter, Lip Slam, it doesn't really matter. Though, keep in mind, I forgot to mention, I'm running an Unset Ring, so we get an additional skill slot. I'm not exactly sure what I'll drop in the build. You could technically make an argument that you could drop cast an Elemental Ailment, or you could drop Forge Hammer, but that does a lot of damage and cold, so I can't really drop Forge Hammer. Maybe Overwhelming Presence in that case could be one of the things that you can remove. I'll show you a little bit of how the build functions after we explain everything, so you get the point. But these are a lot of AoE sources that I'm getting. You can curse max even harder here. So as you can see, I'm turbo curse maxing because I have access to a weird tree where we path in different directions. And yes, you sacrifice some points, but overall it's worth it, because by making these curses so powerful, you get a crazy amount of tankiness. You'll see that it's ridiculous how much we can reduce damage and how much we can slow targets, even bosses, where they don't get affected that much because they have mitigation against curses. It's still very high durability, which makes this build essentially unkillable. I can do all of those super powerful, super stacked abyssal effects, and it doesn't even matter. This is gonna be a long schizo rant. I expect this video to be over 1 hour long. But whoever enjoys watching this can have fun, because I had immense fun. I was turbo addicted to trying to improve this build as much as I can within a limited time frame without going too crazy with my gear. So next thing we're gonna have is we go for some area of effect. Keep in mind some of these things are on the primary weapon set. All the war cries, as I mentioned, are on the secondary weapon set. I'll go over the war cries after everything else in the passive skill tree. So we're gonna get area of effect, and keep in mind that it's important to get these effects to be on your shared tree. You don't want this to be on your primary weapon set only, because it's increased area of effect if you stunned enemies recently, which works with everything that you would also cast in the secondary weapon set, such as war cries. Same thing with this. 50% increased area of effect if you've killed recently. We are gonna get a bunch of damage effects here, and some armor applies to elemental damage. I'm gonna tank through some elemental armor as well. So we get more AoE here, we get some more armor, defend with 120% against projectile attacks. It's just a good amount of armor to have, and more AoE. Then we go down, and we're gonna have a little bit of extra armor, and this heavy armor can give you a lot depending on what kind of build you are running. Alright. Then, here we get a very powerful effect, Guided Hand. Essentially, boosted attacks deal 30% increased damage. And that can have insane synergy with Ancestral Cry, but also there are other methods to get ancestrally boosted attacks. If you use different versions of Fist of War, which I actually used even on Earth Shelter, I did use the one that has 4 seconds cooldown a lot. For heavy stunning a rare or unique enemy, your next attack within 4 seconds will be ancestrally boosted. That can also give you a lot of damage in a lot of different situations. And then you get stun build up, more damage like that. 30% increased area of effect of ancestrally boosted attacks. A lot of AoE, clear potential, especially when combined with Ancestral Cry. We are using 3 war cries in this build, which is pretty interesting. Anyways, next thing up is this. Super important. We are able to get increased magnitude of ailments you inflict. And just think about it. We can make shocks deal more damage. We can increase the value of freeze, chill. It's a magnitude of ailments you inflict. And here you get also 30% of magnitude of ailments you inflict. And this is going to include bleeding. So you can stack all these bonuses to improve your bleeding, ignite, shock, all of these effects, which makes this very powerful. And then since we are already here, might as well spend points to get a lot of burst damage. Yes, you lose some attack speed, but you get a lot of stun build up, a lot of attack damage. These points are pretty fucking useful. Okie dokie. So then we pick up this jewel socket, of course, we go down, and you'll see that we have this little mechanic here, where we can get a bit of glory generation. Presence area of effect is also not too bad, we get some damage. But glory generation, if you combine this 8% with what you can roll on helmets, up to 20%, so I'm getting 26% in this case, means that I can get my Ancestral Cry's glory stacked 1 ignite faster against bosses, which can be pretty impactful, because you're gonna need only 4 ignites instead of 5. And when you're fighting waves of mobs, it's obviously also stacking quite a bit quicker. It's a bit of a gimmick. If you have the helm, plus these 2 points, you get to this sweet threshold of getting 25% increase in your glory generation, which is what I aimed for. There are other ways to get glory generation here, and I think it might be possible even with jewels, if I remember correctly. But other than that, not a big deal. Then we can get a lot of elemental armor here, plus another jewel socket. So we can get a lot of damaging effects, AoE, curse maxing, and that's pretty much it. Now, if I want to increase my damage more, I can give up on some cursing effects and pick up effects such as this. We can grab a lot of nodes here with elemental damage, 30% increased damage with hits against ignited enemies, shocked enemies, chilled enemies. There are definitely some pretty good damaging nodes if you look for them for this type of build. What's anointed on my thing is also 25% increased damage. Actually, this is I believe, a jewel. You'll see in a second. What's anointed is penetration. I'll show you in a moment, but this is obviously one-handed weapon, which I'm using. Increased chance to inflict elemental ailments. It's pretty good on my diamond. We got this thing here. Attack damage penetrates 15% of enemy elemental resistances, which just makes the damage a lot more consistent if you don't have the best sources to apply it. So if you combine this with Frost Bomb, maybe you can use Elemental Weakness in some cases. You can essentially get a lot of penetration, it's not a big deal. Now let's look a bit at the Warcries. So this here we get Warcry Speed, Warcries debilitate enemies, and area of effect. Then we get some recovery rate, increased damage percentage. Next thing up we have, very important, Warcries have a minimum of 10 power. Super impactful. 50% chance to empower 3 additional attacks, which you can empower an insane amount of attacks, basically never run out of empowered hits with Infernal Cry. Warcries empower an additional attack, so you can easily get a lot of empowered Earth Shatters, Torch Hammer, Lip Slams, whatever. Then here we can get Warcry Speed, recovery rate, and some more area of effect right next to it with 2 extra points. Then we are gonna have recover some life and mana when you Warcry. Increase Warcry speed, increased Warcry cooldown recovery rate, and if you really feel like you can fit it in the build for some reason, there's also Blood Magic, which I don't need because I have pretty good mana pool, and there are some ways to get mana in the build. Either way, you would be significantly squishier if you played Blood Magic in a lot of cases, which I think is a bit of a waste to also spend a point here when I will have a good mana pool because I need a good amount of intelligence in this build. Keep in mind, this build has some heavy requirements in strength, intelligence, dexterity to be able to run all of these things properly, because the high levels of Blasphemy, you require level 18 minimum to use these things properly, so they will require a lot of intelligence. And when you swap weapon sets, your stats might also change depending on what you are doing with your build, so you also have to keep that in mind. Just keep in mind that I'm getting higher HP when I'm getting the secondary weapon set, because this has quite a bit of strength attached to it. Because, like I said, the presence area of effect, you can put it on, and on the Lil Mace, I can get some increased energy generation, which is the only thing that's actually useful, that's actually going to benefit. If you try to put some kind of damage increase or other things, they are simply not going to work. The only thing you can put is some base stats, like strength or intelligence, if you really need them to complement the build, or you can have this increased energy. So, now let's have a look at the jewels. We got this Heart of the World Diamond. Movement speed, damage as a call. This was simply a cheap way to increase my damage, but also to get this gain 1 range on melee hit easily. 1 rage on melee hit is gonna make it super easy to keep my rage running and not decaying, essentially forever. This is all you need. One little source of gain 1 range on melee hit. So this extra cold damage is going to contribute towards chill and freeze very nicely. Some extra increase with the chaos, a little bit of movement speed. This was a snatch. Like, I got it very cheap, and it's easy to run in the build. Now let's find the other jewels. There's one here, a Megalomaniac Diamond, which allocates gain 5 rage when hit by an enemy. Every rage also grants 1% increased armor. And if you look at this, I don't want these notes with gain rage when hit by an enemy. These are all useless. So I'm essentially saving 3 points to be able to get this. Well, in total, 4 points where I can get quite a bit of increased armor. And there's also another way to keep rage up very, very easily if I'm simply getting hit by some enemies. Although that's not like super useful, but it can matter in rare scenarios. The coated arms, you've seen it, pretty decent DPS increase, some more power from ailments. Overall, this was a decent addition to the build. Can be replaced, of course, but both effects are reasonably powerful and I can get a lot of dual sockets with this passive skill tree. The next thing I'm running is a mix of durability. I'm trying to get armor, stun build-up, and area of effect. This is what I'm trying to get on my rubies. There's another one here, which pretty much does almost the same thing, except we got some flammability magnitude, easier to apply ignite, can also be some stun build-up. So you'll see the trend is that we have a lot of stun build-up and a lot of element increase, and then you combine it with overwhelming presence, which is super boosted by area of effect. Sorry guys, I'm a bit tired making this video. I might botch some things, some words. But yeah, you can stun very easily and also freeze very easily. You can stun into freeze, into stun, into freeze, and so on. If I play certain boss fights, such as Zesht, we simply go in, stun him, then freeze him, then stun him again. He does like one action. It's pretty fucking cool. Maybe I'll be able to show you. Now we got a very interesting jewel here, which keeps us very healthy. Which also solves every mana problem that you could have almost. Mana on kill, life on kill, magnitude of shock, which is a nice little damage DPS increase, and then this is with the abyssal effect, increased presence area of effect, aura skill save 4% increase magnitude. So yeah, this also does boost my curses even further if they weren't boosted enough already. Holy, we got done with the passive skill tree and with the jewels. Now, let's have a look at my motherfucking items. And then we can get more of a shape of the build. I gotta remember what they actually fucking do, because I haven't seen them in like 2 months. But let's have a look. So we got max rage here, which can kind of be whatever, depending on what armor you need. Max rage just can give you a bit of armor, a bit of damage increase. Not a big deal. But I'm simply trying to maximize my survivability to cap my elemental resistances. Chaos rate is also pretty high. And that's pretty much it with my gear. It's very simple, not super expensive. These have some skins, so don't think they're unique or whatever. Just some normal items. And what's important is to have a good amount of spirit on the chest and on the amulet for this build to function properly, because you'll need quite a bit of spirit for the curses to work. This will be a sacrifice that you have to make for the curses to be actually powerful, to be able to fit in the build. This has a lot of max life, percentage, flat, all attributes, max life. You will be required to have attributes on multiple pieces of gear to be able to meet these strength, intelligence, and dexterity requirements to have all of these things running. Because, for example, Trinity has some dexterity requirements. You'll also need some requirements for different simply jewels. Also, one thing I didn't mention is that you can have this, you have the place holding here. You can have lightning attunement on Lip Slam, and you can charge a lot of lightning resonance for Trinity. Just keep in mind that Trinity does require some dexterity to be used. Anyways, to continue with the build. On the gloves, we got 20% increased magnitude of non-damaging ailments you inflict. Why not 15% to damaging ailments? Well, non-damaging ailments are a bit more powerful to increase in the build overall, because imagine you can increase the magnitude of shock, which directly gives you damage increase anyway. We got level 2 all melee skills, just a lot of damage, pretty offensive gloves. We also got some mana per kill, which essentially makes my character manaless. All mana problems are gone. These gloves could be a lot tankier, but I'm still getting some fire damage, some lightning damage, pretty good rolls on everything here. And yeah, that's just another way to get a lot of damage. Let's also have a look at the boots. Movement speed is pretty important for this type of build. I also get some extra elemental damage. Keep in mind, it's important to have some stuff like strength on some pieces of gear. We got 20 here. Then on the belt, it's pretty basic. We just have a lot of stats, a lot of chaos res, some other res, a lot of HP and armor. We get some increased charm charges gained, which can also come in handy. And for the rings, we got even more damage. Attributes trying to cap out my resistances, nothing too crazy. Just more elemental damage. So you combine all of this elemental damage from rings, from gloves, from mace, just get a crazy amount of elemental damage, which further contributes all of that bleed magnitude and applying those elemental ailments very quickly to just freeze and chill and shudder and do all of those things. And yes, you can technically use some kind of herald, the one which shatters, herald of ice, in combination with this, but it doesn't work very well, and you only have a limited amount of skills you can use on this build. And overall, I think my build worked pretty well for what it does. For the charms, we got slow and freeze, but also we got the Spirit of the Boar on the Rite of Passage Golden Charm. Spirit of the Boar, which guarantees bleed on other hits, not just having my bleed gem on the earth shatter. My other skills can also apply bleed now. And you also get damage as extra fire damage, higher chance to ignite, more damage on bleed, more increases with elemental damage, and of course damage reduction. So Spirit of the Boar, although you can use other animals, Spirit of the Boar, the Kaban, does do kind of the best job in this build, pretty much. That should be it with the items. As I said, this weapon is not too hard to craft. You just have to get a good base which has the suffixes. The prefixes are kind of easy to craft, at least in this league. I haven't looked at the new league, I'll be real with you. But I still love this build and I want to have it saved somewhere. So now we kind of got the idea of the build. We can deal shit ton of elemental damage, apply all of the elemental ailments, have all of this aura with curse maxing, which makes us very tanky. We can have a decent amount of armor stats, just basic, so you can tank through stuff reliably. And then by using the curse max, which I'll show you in a moment how much you can slow and reduce, which is pretty crazy with this much magnitude. It's kind of funny. Then you combine it with all of these good life effects from Blood Mage and the damage increases, and I can end up kind of one-shotting everything, tanking everything. I don't clear super fast. At the end of the day, it's a fucking maze, kind of. We are playing a warrior here. But let me show you some attributes of the build. So Earth Shatter clears very easily, with no problems. If I hit a lot of enemies, I can also build Glory pretty fast. That'll be super easy in a breach. We can also use the Lip Slam to build Glory if we want to, and Endurance charges, which as you can see they build very easily. And then I can use my Ancestral Cry to get this big AoE Lip Slam that just pulverizes everything, one-shots even elites with the current numbers I have, because I have pretty fucking strong weapon. And you'll just jump into packs of mobs like this all fucking game. And as you can see, the Ancestral Cry lasts for 3 years. If you're lucky, it can last for like a minute. If you roll it properly. And this is kind of how you will clear a lot of situations. And of course, as you're progressing through the build, before your Lip Slam is reasonably strong, before you can kind of introduce Ancestral Cry to your build reliably, you can clear everything with Earth Shatter. As you can see, there are also meteors raining from the sky whenever I'm in my secondary weapon set. So I use Earth Shatter, I can cast Infernal Cry for example, and now meteors are raining because I am currently sitting in my secondary weapon set because I casted the War Cry. The build feels very reliable, very smooth, very fun to play. Also, I don't know what they changed exactly to Forge Shimmer, but it didn't used to have this crystal animation for when it did the empowered attack when I was playing, which is a bit weird. It was doing it on the explosion on the ground, which you can also hit to keep these resonant stacks. You can get a lot of cold resonance very easily as you are beating it. Now, let's fight a boss here. You can have a bout of a rage stacking. We can put this thing on the ground. Explode it. As you can see, there are tons of debuffs. Frozen, stunned, boom. Bada bim boom boom. Not the most optimal nuke that we can do. No Ancestral Cry. Just a weak ass boss. But you can already get the idea. I don't know if I put a breach on this map or something. Oh, there is a breach on this map. Maybe we can get a better idea of some footage. Either way, a lot of the clearing will be possible with the Lip Slam. Don't expect this build to be like super fast or anything, but I'm able to get a lot of value in breaches. And even though the hitting doesn't look super reliable, it ends up being reasonably fast. I'm not playing Deadeye or something, but I was able to get to level 95. Right, level 95 quite easily, like quite fast. Once I figured out this build, I pretty much jumped levels. There's a breach. So let's see how we're doing it. If I even remember how to play the fucking video game. The density is pretty low, but at any point we can just activate this and just hop on packs of monsters. The petting is not very good here. Try to find some more breach mobs. As you can see, I still have this effect for a pretty long time. Then you can restack it whenever you want. That's the club that I'm using. You cannot just shit on enemies like this from the sky. With all of the AoE mixed. And when you feel like it, you can use some Earth Shatter. It's a very easy way to clear. Kind of like playing Warbringer, clearing with Warcries. Definitely something I don't mind. Why do I feel like they reduced the monster density, bro? Anyways. Let's get a little bridge splinter here. Not the most amazing showcase. The density on this map is kinda low. Maybe I should like turbo juice the map to show you guys better. But not really needed. You kinda get the idea. Kinda get how the build flows together. and how it worked very well with me. Now, this came from pure study of the game. I didn't look at any guides. I didn't look up any information of what the other players are doing. I simply had friends interacting with, telling me some stuff about the game, and mostly using the wiki. It was simply just looking at what is in the game, going in blind, and trying to create a cool, fun build that can do something. And that's how I just started finding more and more mechanics, trial and error, and I already had some ideas because I only played a bit in 0.1. In 0.2, I haven't played at all. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. Lots of interesting uniques that probably aren't even really fucking used. Passive skill tree interesting, Blood Mage, Titan, Curse Maxer, Warcries on secondary weapon set. It's pretty fucking cool. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I had a lot of fucking fun with this build. G, motherfucking G.